Have you ever stopped to think that even in a highly connected continent like Europe, there are still numerous territorial disputes happening right now? Some are unfolding as we speak, yet almost no one knows about them because major media outlets tend to overlook them, like disputes over a mountain peak or a tiny island in the middle of the ocean. Others, however, are incredibly dangerous, with serious consequences that affect millions of lives. But why do these disputes persist? In a place where so many treaties have been signed and alliances formed, you'd think borders would be firmly established by now, right? The truth is, many of these rivalries stem from unresolved historical conflicts, poorly drawn divisions, or even cultural and national pride. Today, we're diving into why these disputes still exist, what they mean, and how they impact not just Europe but global geopolitics as a whole. Get ready to uncover stories ranging from quirky disagreements over barely visible territories on the map to high-stakes tensions involving entire populations that could change the course of geopolitics. And to begin, we need to look at the big picture of these conflicts. Europe is a continent with a dense history, marked by territorial disputes, some of which still linger today. There are 41 active disputes, varying in intensity and significance. Some may seem almost trivial at first glance, while others have the potential to spark political crises or even large-scale armed conflicts. Some disputes are minor, mostly symbolic, and have little direct impact on the economy or people's lives. They often involve small areas or historically insignificant regions but still carry meaning for the nations involved. A good example is the disagreement over Mont Blanc's summit, which we'll explore later. Others have stronger cultural, historical, or economic implications, arising from different interpretations of borders or even natural resources hidden underground or in territorial waters. These debates tend to be more intense and often find their way onto national political agendas. Finally, some disputes are extremely serious, involving inhabited territories, strategic resources, or issues of national sovereignty. These are the most alarming because they can generate significant tensions, affect entire populations, and, in some cases, lead to humanitarian crises or armed conflicts, as we've seen in Ukraine in recent years. Even with centuries of treaties, the formation of the European Union, and other integration initiatives, it's clear that Europe hasn't resolved all its territorial rivalries. On the contrary, in some cases, these disputes remain as scars from a past that continues to shape the present. Not every territorial dispute in Europe involves explosive tensions or immediate impacts. Some are subtler but still carry a historical or cultural weight that makes them relevant to the nations involved. Mont Blanc, for example, is the stage for an old controversy between France and Italy. For the French, the summit of this mountain lies entirely within French territory. Meanwhile, the Italians argue that the dividing line should follow the natural watershed, which would place part of the summit in Italian territory. This disagreement stems from different interpretations of the Treaty of Turin, signed in 1860. Even without direct impact on daily life, the dispute involves questions of identity and national pride. Another interesting case is the EMS River estuary, located on the border between Germany and the Netherlands. The Germans argue that the border follows the river's left bank, while the Dutch believe the boundary should be drawn down the middle of the estuary. Although the area in question isn't economically strategic, the dispute persists, highlighting how territorial issues can remain complex even in peaceful regions. There are also lesser-known examples, like tiny islands or patches of land so small they don't even appear on most maps. Despite seeming irrelevant, these areas remain points of contention, reaffirming the importance of clearly defined borders and respect for national sovereignty. Even when these disputes don't escalate into major tensions, they help us understand how much the past and traditions still shape relations between European nations. Another relevant factor is that the continent's borders are the result of centuries of negotiations, wars, and treaties which, though they seemed definitive at the time, left ambiguities and scars that still cause tensions today. Historic treaties, such as the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648, played a crucial role in shaping Europe's modern borders. That agreement, for example, ended the 30 Years' War and established new territorial boundaries based on the interests of the powers at the time. However, the borders outlined in such documents often ignored geographic or cultural realities, creating points of contention that persist to this day. After the World Wars, Europe's map underwent drastic changes. Borders were redrawn, territories exchanged, and entire nations redefined. A striking example is the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire after World War I, which led to the emergence of new countries and the creation of borders that didn't always respect the ethnic or cultural composition of local populations. This reorganization gave rise to tensions that still affect regions like the Balkans and parts of Central Europe. Another significant factor contributing to disputes was the collapse of the Soviet Union. When the USSR dissolved in 1991, 15 new countries emerged, but the borders between them weren't always clearly defined. This left several areas in dispute, particularly where ethnic minorities or strategic resources were involved. The question of Crimea between Russia and Ukraine, most recently highlighted in 2014, is a notorious example of this fraught dynamic. Additionally, divisions made during colonial periods, often arbitrary, also left their mark on Europe. While this phenomenon is more commonly associated with Africa and the Middle East, in Europe, some borders drawn by empires like the Ottoman Empire still influence modern disputes. We've touched on this before in a documentary about Turkey, which emerged from the Ottoman Empire. This influence is also evident in regions like the Caucasus, where historical and cultural complexities continue to fuel rivalries. But behind many territorial disputes in Europe lies something beyond maps or treaties: national pride. For the countries involved, claiming a territory, no matter how small or strategically insignificant, often becomes a matter of identity, sovereignty, and even internal unity. A clear example is Mont Blanc. Although it isn't economically significant, it's treated as a national symbol by both France and Italy. In France, Mont Blanc is often associated with the country's natural grandeur, while in Italy, it represents a shared heritage with the Alpine North. In disputes like this, the emotional value of the territory outweighs any practical benefits. Territorial issues are also frequently used by politicians as tools to bolster national sentiment. During times of crisis or instability, emphasizing the importance of a territorial dispute can serve as a way to unite the population around a common goal. This type of rhetoric is effective because it taps into deep feelings of belonging and pride, often glossing over the historical or legal complexities involved. National pride also plays a role in disputes involving ethnic or cultural minorities. In the Balkans, for instance, territories are contested not just for geographic control but for what they represent to the identity of specific ethnic groups. This makes negotiations even more delicate, as each side sees the territory as an essential part of its history and culture. Even in cases where the territory holds little strategic value, it can become a symbol of resistance or self-determination. For smaller or newly established nations, like some of the former Soviet republics, securing every claimed piece of land is a way to assert their position on the international stage and reinforce their independence after years of hardship. However, some territorial disputes in Europe carry far greater weight, going beyond simple diplomatic disagreements. They involve historical, cultural, or economic issues that directly affect the policies of the countries involved. While not considered extremely severe, these rivalries can escalate rapidly depending on political or strategic circumstances. One of the most notable regions for moderate disputes is the Caucasus. Situated between Europe and Asia, this area is marked by immense ethnic and religious diversity, making its borders highly complex. A clear example is the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh, a mountainous region predominantly inhabited by Armenians but officially part of Azerbaijan. This dispute, fueled by historical and identity issues, has led to multiple military crises over the past decades. The Balkans are another region where moderate territorial disputes are a constant. After the collapse of Yugoslavia, the redrawing of borders left several areas in tension. Kosovo, for instance, declared independence from Serbia in 2008, but Belgrade has never recognized the separation. This standoff remains one of the region's most sensitive issues, with implications affecting both the involved countries and the European Union's politics. Maritime disputes are yet another source of rivalry. In the North Sea, countries like the United Kingdom, Norway, and Denmark frequently debate the delimitation of exclusive economic zones. These areas, while seemingly remote or uninhabited, conceal resources like oil, natural gas, and fish stocks that are vital to national economies. In the Black Sea, disputes intensify due to its strategic importance. Russia, for instance, has clear interests in expanding its influence in the region, often clashing with countries like Ukraine, Romania, and Bulgaria. These tensions are heightened by the presence of natural resources and the Black Sea's critical position as a trade route, particularly with its connection to the Mediterranean. While some disputes in Europe remain controlled, others cross the line of diplomacy, leading to political, economic, and even armed conflicts. These disputes, often involving strategic territories or entire populations, deeply impact relations between countries and the region's stability. The most prominent and alarming dispute in recent years is between Russia and Ukraine. The conflict began in 2014 when Russia annexed Crimea, a strategically located territory in the Black Sea. This annexation triggered international sanctions and reignited historical rivalries between the two countries. By 2022, the situation escalated into a full-scale war, with disputes extending beyond Crimea to regions like Donetsk and Luhansk in eastern Ukraine. The impact has gone far beyond their borders, disrupting global markets, reshaping international alliances, and triggering one of the largest refugee crises since World War II. Another example of serious disputes lies in the Caucasus, involving Georgia and its separatist regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. These territories, supported by Russia, declared independence after the fall of the Soviet Union but remain internationally recognized as part of Georgia. In 2008, this tension erupted into a 5-day war between Georgia and Russia, underscoring how such disputes can destabilize an entire region. In the Baltic region, tensions also rise between Russia and countries like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. These nations, once part of the Soviet Union, face ongoing pressure due to their borders and Russian-speaking populations, which Moscow often uses as a pretext for territorial claims or political leverage. This creates a constant state of alert, especially since these countries are strategically positioned within NATO, increasing the risk of military escalation. These serious disputes not only threaten local stability but also have a ripple effect on global geopolitics. They challenge organizations like the UN and the European Union, which must navigate the complexities of these rivalries and often find solutions that attempt to satisfy conflicting interests. The European Union plays a crucial role in attempting to minimize territorial disputes across the continent by promoting political, economic, and social integration among its members. However, its reach and effectiveness have limits, particularly in cases involving countries outside its direct influence or disputes of high complexity. One of the EU's primary mechanisms for addressing territorial disputes is fostering an environment of cooperation and the free movement of goods, people, and capital. This model helps ease tensions by reducing the practical importance of borders. Countries like Germany and Poland, with a history of intense rivalries, demonstrate how European integration can transform old tensions into friendly and economically interdependent relationships. Additionally, the EU has used membership as a diplomatic tool. To join, candidate countries must resolve border disputes with their neighbors and demonstrate a commitment to the rule of law and human rights. This was the case for Slovenia and Croatia, which had to negotiate territorial issues before completing their accession process. On the other hand, the EU's limitations become apparent in disputes involving countries outside its jurisdiction or along the continent's eastern borders. Cases like the conflict between Russia and Ukraine or tensions in the Balkans often fall beyond the scope of EU policies. Even within the bloc, challenges arise in ensuring all members follow the same rules, especially when national interests are at stake. Despite these challenges, the European Union remains one of the most effective institutions for preventing conflicts on the continent. Its ability to unite economies and align political interests has prevented many rivalries from escalating into major crises. However, growing instability in nearby regions, such as the Caucasus and the Black Sea, demands a more robust response and greater mediation capacity to address disputes that directly threaten Europe's security and stability. Territorial disputes in Europe, even those considered low intensity, carry significant implications for the continent's future. In a global context where geopolitics is becoming increasingly complex, these conflicts can influence everything from diplomatic negotiations to regional security and economic stability. One of the most promising approaches to addressing these disputes is international mediation. Furthermore, advancements in new technologies, such as mapping systems and resource exploration, could shift the focus of these conflicts. Regions previously overlooked might become strategically important due to new discoveries of oil, gas, or other valuable resources. This could turn old rivalries into more urgent economic issues. Finally, these disputes could impact European integration itself. The European Union will need to reinvent itself to address growing tensions at its borders and among its members. Without coordinated efforts to resolve conflicts, there's a risk that internal and external divisions will grow, weakening the bloc and creating openings for rival powers to exploit. While the future of territorial disputes in Europe remains uncertain, it's clear that how they are managed will have profound implications not just for the countries involved, but for the stability and security of the entire world. And if you enjoyed this documentary here on GlobalFlow, don't forget to subscribe to the channel right now for more videos like this one. Now check out the next documentary we've selected for you on the screen. See you there.